Let me ask you something. If international law is supposed to apply to everyone, why does it sometimes feels like it only really works on smaller countries? Think about it. When a weaker country violates international law, things move fast. Sanctions appear almost immediately. Emergency meetings get called. Coalition form overnight. But when powerful countries do something questionable, suddenly everything becomes complicated. So, what's going on here? Because what's happening right now between the United States, Israel and Iran isn't just another regional conflict. It's something bigger. It's a stress test for international law itself. Recently, tensions between the United States, Israel and Iran escalated dramatically. We saw missile exchanges, direct attacks, retaliatory strikes. For decades, Iran and Israel avoided direct war. Instead, they fought indirectly, through proxies, through intelligence operations, through cyber warfare. But once direct attacks starts happening, that's no longer a shadow conflict. That's open confrontation. And when the United States backs Israel both militarily and politically, the stakes are no longer regional. They become global. Now, here is where international law enters the conversation. Under international law, states are generally not allowed to use force against another state. That's one of the core principles of the system. The United Nations Charter is clear: no use of force except in self-defense, or when authorized by the United Nations Security Council. So, the real question becomes, who decides what counts as self-defense? And more importantly, who actually enforces the rules? On paper, international law looks very fair. Every state is sovereign. Every state is equal. That's the principle. But reality is more complicated because not all states have the same level of power, and power matters. Let's be honest for a moment. If a small country launches a cross-border strike tomorrow, how fast will sanctions hit? How quickly will emergency meetings be called? Probably very quickly. But when major power or their allies take military action, the response is often slower, more cautious, but sometimes deeply divided. Because enforcement of international law is not automatic, it's political. And this is where the system starts to show its crack. And here is something many people don't realize. Inside the UN system, 5 countries hold special position, the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. Those 5 are the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China. And they all have something called veto power, which means any one of them can block a resolution, even if the majority of the council support it. So, if one of these major power or one of their allies is involved in a dispute, they can effectively stop action at the Security Council. The very institution designed to enforce international law can be blocked by the most powerful states. That's not conspiracy. That's simply how the system was designed after World War II. But moments like the current escalation between the US, Israel, and Iran make the imbalance very visible. Now, to be clear, this isn't about saying one side is right and another side is wrong. That's a different debate. The deeper question is this: is international law a moral framework? Or is it also a political instrument? Because if enforcement depends heavily on power, then different countries experience international law very differently. For smaller states, international law can feel like a ceiling, a set of hard limits, but for powerful states, those limits sometimes look more negative. And when the world sees inconsistent enforcement, credibility starts to erode, trust erodes, and once trust erodes, compliance tends to drop as well. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is geopolitics, it's happening far away, why should I care? But conflicts between major powers rarely stay local. Markets react, oil prices can spike, trade routes can become unstable, defense spending increases, and that often feeds into inflation. Energy price rises, food price follows. Global stability isn't an abstract concept. Its direct affect the global economy. And when international law struggle to contain escalation between powerful states, everyone ends up feeling the consequences. So, here's the honest answer. International law itself is not inherently biased, but its enforcement depends on political will. And political will often depends on power. So officially, no. International law is not just a rule book for smaller countries, but structurally, it can sometimes feel that way. And that perception alone is dangerous, because law without consistent enforcement slowly turns into suggestion. And a world where rules become optional is a world where escalation becomes easier, conflict becomes more frequent, and global stability becomes more harder to maintain. International law was built after two devastating world wars, not because humanity suddenly became peaceful, but because the world learned what happens when power has no limits. The system was meant to create guardrails, to prevent escalation, to create rules everyone will follow. The real question today isn't whether the system is perfect. It never was. The real question is this: are the most powerful states in the world still committed to those rules? Because if the strongest actors start treating the rules as flexible, why would the rest of the world continue to believing in them? And that's not a legal issue, that's a global stability issue. Alright, let me know what you think in the comments. Bye bye.